Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome once again. Syracuse basketball postgame. My name is Brent alongside my friend and colleague Mike Curtis. We're presented by Krause Health. Another long day for Mr. Curtis, grinding out, watching Syracuse women's basketball. A comeback win for the women over Notre Dame. And Syracuse men's basketball, a few hours later at the Carrier Dome, needed a little comeback of their own, a bite, scratch, and claw type of game at the Carrier Dome. Ultimately, a 76-73 win for the Orange. And, Mike, it was certainly a tale of two halves on the defensive end for the Orange. In the first half, what defense? They gave up 47 points. NC State was killing them on the high-low. Bates and Helms down low, just having their way. In the second half, Syracuse tightened things up just enough. NC State, we'll give you the numbers here in a moment. Not as efficient offensively, but still a close game, and you just came out of their locker room. They didn't have two of their best players. We knew Devin Daniels would not be in, that horrific injury. We wish the best for him, that torn ACL that he suffered Wednesday night in a win over Wake Forest. And then we learned just before tip-off, DJ Funderburk would not play for NC State, and it almost didn't matter because this one came right down to the end.
Yeah, Brent. Two incredible wins for both Syracuse basketball programs today. But I just came out of the NC State presser, and NC State coach, Kevin Keats, he said he was disappointed, but he was definitely happy with how his team performed, despite being without two of its best players. Against the zone, he pretty much said they didn't make shots. They went 0 from 8 from 3-point range in the second half. And he said they got the same looks in the first half and they made those, but they just couldn't knock them down in the second. And he thinks that was the difference in the game right there.
Yeah, we'll give you the numbers here shortly. NC State, a much different team in the second half. But on that defense, amongst the things that Jim Boeheim said in his postgame press conference, and I quote, "That's the bottom line. If our defense doesn't get better, we won't win. It's pretty simple, really." So Jim happy about the win and how the team rallied, but certainly they need a better defensive effort going forward here. And I wanted to jump into some of the numbers here and go over some players that continue to play well, some players that bounce back, and how really at the end of the day, Mike, we've been saying this for a while, and this just continues to become more apparent to me. Kadari Richmond needs to play more. He needs to be in whatever backcourt combination it is. If it's Kadari and Joe, if that's the hot hand, if it's Kadari and Buddy, you got three guards. They're all going to play. But Kadari Richmond makes such a difference when he's on the court. So we'll get to that here shortly. And let me give you some numbers, though. Syracuse outshoots NC State slightly. 29 of 63. That's 46%. NC State was 27 of 61. That's 44%. But I want to go to the second half because Syracuse outshot NC State 47% to 32%. NC State, we mentioned 47 points in the first half. They scored just 26 in the second half. They go 10 of 31 in that half. Syracuse, 8 of 21 from three-point range, a little bit better than their 5 three-pointers they had against Virginia back on Monday night. NC State, 6 of 23 overall, but again, in the second half, State goes 0 of 8 from three-point range to show you the defensive difference for the Orange in the second half. Free throws matter, right? 10 of 11 at the free throw line for the Orange, 90% there. They did not get to the free throw line as much as they should have in this game. The fact that the officiating, I'll tell you, Mike, the officiating on Quincy Guerrier in particular, I'll just call it out. It was bad. There was the stretch at the end of the game where NC State kept fouling, right, just to get over the bonus. Syracuse should have been well into the bonus by then. Quincy Guerrier got beat up in that game, and he did not get enough calls.
Yeah, Guerrier had a couple instances where he made the layup despite having contact. Serious amount of contact, and the refs just swallowed their whistles. And I think that if they would have called more fouls for Guerrier, I think Syracuse would have had a greater win margin.
I agree. And I think he had to anticipate that going into ACC play against a team like this with Bates and Helms down low. They actually called a foul on Guerrier at one point late in this game. You're just like, what's going on here? But it all worked out in the end for the Orange. Just to give you a couple more numbers here as we go. First time this year, Mike, that Syracuse won a game where they lost the rebounding battle. Syracuse had been 9-0 in games they out-rebounded teams and 0-5 in teams they were out-rebounded. NC State won on the boards tonight 37-35, but Syracuse ultimately wins the game. Points in the paint did tilt towards NC State 40-36, but it was pretty close throughout. Second chance points in favor of NC State 13-8. Syracuse had just 10 turnovers in this game. 12 points off those turnovers for NC State. That was important because NC State's a team that loves to pressure you. They love to come after you for 40 minutes. They were the top team in the ACC coming into this game in that department, Mike. And you go back to last year's game, NC State actually turned the ball over more than Syracuse, but they got 23 points off Syracuse's 15 turnovers last year, and that tilted things heavily in favor of NC State. So as Jim was saying, defensive-wise, Syracuse, they haven't been doing it all year, and against one of the more aggressive defensive teams, only 10 turnovers on the night.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out, you mentioned Syracuse won for the first time despite being out-rebounded. And you got to think they probably would have won the rebounding battle if Quincy Guerrier wasn't in foul trouble. He still managed to pull down. He tallied a double-double of 10 points, 10 rebounds. But you got to think if he wasn't in foul trouble, he probably could have gotten 13 or 14 rebounds tonight.
Yeah, Quincy with a boo-boo at the end of the game there, following a three-point shooter. Syracuse is up 74-70. He follows the guy in the corner. He hits all three, and it was kind of a class of what not to do at the end of the game, and he fouled out in that instance. But Syracuse got to the free throw line themselves. Marek Dolzaj and Alan Griffin to the free throw line, and that's remarkable. I'm going to give you some numbers here shortly, but Marek Dolzaj came in and has gone from like a 60% free throw shooter to up around, I think he's at 87% now, hit some clutch ones down the stretch. Joe Girard's the guy you want with the ball in his hands at the end in a tight situation like that to go to the free throw line. They couldn't get it to him, but Marek and Alan Griffin were great. Griffin with 19 points overall. He had 6 rebounds on the day. You mentioned Guerrier's double-double, Mike. He had 10 and 10 in this game. We mentioned Girard, a rough night for him, just 5 points, 1 of 5 from three-point range. I think he was 2 of 10. Yep, 2 of 10 overall shooting. Buddy Boeheim, a much better night, kind of got out of the doldrums he's been in shooting the ball. 4 of 8 from three-point range, 17 points on the night. You mentioned Dolzaj, 11 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals. Jim Boeheim said it after the game. He's doing everything we could possibly ask him to do at this point. He's the Swiss Army knife of the box score every game, Mike. Just everything coming out of him.
Yeah, when Dolzaj is aggressive and he's having a good night, it usually bodes well for Syracuse. But how about the turnaround for Buddy Boeheim tonight? 4 of 8 from three-point range. And you can tell when he's clicking, it opens up so much more for the Syracuse offense. I think when they came out of that halftime break, they looked to get it to Quincy on the inside. And Quincy could either make a move or he could kick it out. And Boeheim and Alan Griffin were right there just waiting for three-point shots.
So that's a big takeaway tonight. Buddy needed to bounce back. He got in the paint a little bit. I get a little frustrated with Buddy when he kind of backs into the paint, dribbles about 5, 6, 7 times, and you just know he's going to shoot it. He never looks to pass the ball. Now, the guys around him can maybe move around a little bit more and get open, but you kind of know what's coming from 10 feet away. He did get fouled a bunch in there, which, again, was not called tonight. NC State they let it go a little bit there. But Buddy needed this, and he hit some open shots. And the difference there to me, Mike, in a lot of ways is Kadari Richmond. That's my second big takeaway from this game. I mentioned it a moment ago. I just think he's got to play more. I think he's got to be on the court. If it's with Buddy, if it's with Joe, whatever the situation is, that's a good problem to have that mix in that backcourt there. And the other big takeaway is something that Jim said, and I noted it a moment ago. Look, this team's got to play better defense. That's NC State missing 2 starters. That's a game that doesn't really help your NCAA tournament resume. That's a team that's a couple spots behind Syracuse in the ACC standings. It's the team you're going to see again in about 10 days, by the way. They play NC State again on February 9th. If Syracuse is going to pick up some quality wins, they've got to play much better defense than they did tonight. To their credit, they did play much better defense in the second half. But typically the Syracuse teams that do well and stream towards the postseason are getting better defensively. This team is actually regressing in some ways defensively. So it's going to be interesting, Mike, as the calendar flips to February tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we'd be having a much different conversation if Syracuse had lost that game tonight.
Yes.
And part of the reason why they perform so well on defense is, like you said, when you add Kadari Richmond, that's what he brings off the bench. His length is tremendous at the top of that zone. And specifically, I think he found a recipe for success tonight because he was able to use his size to overwhelm NC State's smaller guards and get in the paint whenever he wanted to. Like he can literally do that anytime he wants to. He had a nifty left-handed score towards the end of regulation.
That's a big bucket.
That was huge for him. And I think going forward, he just has to take advantage of those matchups more often.
And that's it, because Buddy and Allen, as Jim was saying at the press conference, are drawing some of the bigger defenders away, which allowed Kadari to get that mismatch a lot. So what do you say we react to some of your comments here? Appreciate everybody checking in wherever you are. A rare Sunday night appearance for us, but hey, we work the weekends. We'll work on Sundays for you. We work when they tell us to, right? When the game's on, we're here with you. Tony's with us tonight too, and he says, Brent, do you think Kadari should start now? I absolutely do, Tony. Now, again, let's keep this in mind. It doesn't matter who starts for Jim Boeheim. It's who plays the game when it matters, right? When the matchups are best and who's on the floor when it matters. And Kadari, for the most part, has been on the floor when it matters. So I get what you're saying when you say, should he start? Should he play more? Should he be on the floor when it matters? Every other way we can phrase this, the answer is yes. I agree with you, Tony. But keep that in mind. Jim Boeheim's starting lineup can be highly overrated. Who's on the court when it matters? Dion Waiters never started a game for Syracuse, and I think that worked out well for them. Michael says a win is a win, but this was a bad win and would have been a bad loss if not for impressive buckets from Kadari Richmond. Mike, you just said that a moment ago. That's the world of sports, but I think this conversation would be a little different if the score, even at 76-73, went the other way tonight. Absolutely.
It's funny because Kadari's been chomping at getting more playing time ever since Buddy Boeheim went down from contract tracing earlier in the season. That's when Syracuse fans really got a glimpse to see what he could do on both ends of the floor. And I noticed he hasn't shot in a three in a long time. Right. Right. You got to think Boeheim has gotten in his ear, especially in that game where he took several and missed. So his performance has been incredible.
Lynn is watching us tonight from Jupiter, Florida, saying hello and keep warm up there. Yeah, it's like literally 12 degrees outside my window. There's a nor'easter, 6 to 12 inches of snow on the way. Good times. Hope you're down there, Lynn. Let's see. Joe says, never thought I'd see the day when the announcers say Syracuse is a good free throw shooting team. Yeah, believe it or not, Joe, this is on track to be Jim Boeheim's best free throw shooting team. So take what you can get at this point, right? Because hashtag free throws matter. Let's see. A couple more comments from everybody. Again, appreciate you checking in where you are. A lot of criticism of Girard out there. Yeah. Look, Girard's at the point where you can hit threes. You need him out there to shoot free throws. But he struggles on defense, Mike. He really gets in a rut. Joe's one of those guys that kind of has, like a car in a Syracuse winter, he's got to really warm up and get warmer as the game goes. It might be better for him to come in at the 2, come in spots, come in off the bench, be a role player. I mean, at this point, he just looks overwhelmed at the point guard position. When he's at the 2 and he's coming off either Kadari or whatever the case may be, somebody else running the point, he just looks like a more free, confident player. So I don't know if we're going to see that change anytime soon. Jim's pretty stubborn with these things, but it's becoming apparent that Kadari Richmond has earned more time, as we've discussed here, as a lot of you are saying here in the comments. Somebody mentioned here, I'm sorry I missed your name, but they asked, oh, here it is. Chris says, is Woody Newton hurt? Mike, Jim said in the postgame press conference that he's confident that Barama Sidibe will play Wednesday. He warmed up as normal tonight, didn't get in. But he also said Woody Newton, who's been recovering a bit from a COVID pause, he could get the call Wednesday as well. And you and I have wondered about that a bit. He looked really impressive before they got to conference play. He's only played 5 minutes since, but it looks like he's working his way back onto the court.
Yeah, adding those two back to the rotation would be tremendous for this team that lacks size and rebounding. Barama Sidibe has missed every game since the Orange's season opener. just adding him back gives you at least 6, maybe 7 rebounds that you weren't getting prior to. And Woody Newton's just length and athleticism is pretty impressive. And hopefully he can get back into a good groove, because before the COVID pause, he was playing really well.
He really was. And I think he can make a difference. I think he can be a spark off the bench. Speaking of the bench, Jesse Edwards and Robert Braswell didn't get a lot of time, but Jim Boeheim certainly not happy with what he saw from them in that short time they were in. Boeheim noting specifically with Jesse Edwards that he let a 6'2" guard kind of get by him. Jim's patience with bench players, particularly young bench players, is very short, and they make 1 or 2 bad plays. They get back on that bench. Jim and I had a little disagreement on the radio this week about Jesse Edwards not playing more, so I guess score 1 for Jim there, because Jesse came in tonight when when NC State was pounding Syracuse down low, and yeah, he got overwhelmed a little bit in that case. So I guess in this case, Jesse couldn't help the Orange, but point being, Mike, that paint was open again. NC State, this is what teams do to Syracuse. And when they can do it well, Syracuse gets overwhelmed on the defensive end. And it's simple. You get to that free throw line, high-low, bang it down to the open guy. And, Bates and Helms in particular had that play a lot in the first half in particular.
Yeah, Manny Bates pointed out in the post-game presser, their main goal was to get that ball right in the middle so they could either dip it for an open dunk or so the zone can collapse and they can kick it out to their shooters. And you saw that's what they did in that first half. They weren't able to get those shots to go down in the second half, but that's every team's objective when they play this Syracuse zone, and that's how you beat it.
Matt says, I'm not sure I buy Sidibe making this team better. Time will tell. He still can't play offense, and one would think the offense will suffer with him in the game. Matt, the only reason I'll disagree with you is on 2 fronts. Now, he's got to get back into the flow here. So even when he does play, he's not going to be, sharp 100% right off the bench, ready to go. But you got to remember those last 10 games of last season. He was sharp offensively. He was averaging a double-double. He helps this team defensively because he knows where to be in the zone. He's much more how can I put this, vocal than Marek Dolezaj is, calling things out, moving his teammates around. He's a good rebounder, and he just takes pressure off Marek. God bless Marek. He's doing everything he can right now, but Barama makes them better, I think, in a lot of ways. But, Mike, it's going to be February 1st tomorrow. By the time Barama gets into the flow of things, is it going to be in time to help this team is the big question.
Yeah, we'll probably be in March and looking at the ACC tournament by the time he really gets started and gets back into his groove. But if he peaks at the right time and the Orange are able to string together a couple of wins in a row to make a NCAA tournament berth, things could get interesting, but we never know. I see Michael has put it in the comments that he wants a Louisville game prediction. Do you have any for him, Brent?
Look, Louisville is good. Louisville is right on the fringe of the top 25. I like what that program has become, in the new era. I've got their coach is right on the tip of my tongue. I had his name there. Bald guy. So help me out, guys. Who's the Louisville coach? He's right on the tip of my tongue there. Chris Mack, right? Takes over for Pitino. Louisville's always tough. I got to be honest with you, Michael. I haven't seen a ton of Louisville play this year. I'll start digging in on that matchup in the next couple of days here, but it's at home. And what Syracuse has to do is take care of business at home, and that's a quality win. So you get Virginia Tech in your back pocket, and if you can get that one in your back pocket too at home, that's a big for Syracuse as bubble talk is going to start heating up here. But as the case with no matter who's coaching that team, you got to hit threes against Louisville. You got to go tempo. You got to hit threes. And I think that's a game Kadari could help you. It looks like Woody Newton's going to play that game. We mentioned Barama could be back in there. So we'll have much more on the Cardinals as we get a little closer to that game. But it's always interesting when those two teams go at it. That's for sure. Dale says free throws matter 80% as a team. Free throws always matter, especially in a game like this, right? 10 of 11, 90%. And they should have been at the free throw line more. Those refs were brutal out there. David says can do the high-low thing amongst Marek and Barama. And look, somebody else said it a couple of comments back. Barama just takes up more space in the zone. Marek, God bless the guy, just, can't catch up in time on that high-low a lot of times. That's one weakness in his game. And Mike, what we saw today, the 4-1 zone. How many times were those high wings just way up there? And it was like a straight line of 4 players, and Marek's all by himself in the back there. You're like, no, you could see the high-low play coming.
Yeah, you and our good friend Donna Datota pointed that out a couple times on Twitter. That 4-1, I think it was the first time this season I've seen it personally. But also when they did that, it kind of freed up the inside so NC State could get those easy dunks. I saw them ease back on it in the second half, but yeah, you're right. That was that was some defensive stance.
I'll tell you what, I think we'll end it there for tonight. Much more to come on syracuse.com. I mentioned the Louisville game earlier. Mike and I will be back at it after that game live. If you do miss it, though, we put this up on our Syracuse Orange Sports YouTube page. Some of you are watching live right there now, but you can find it there. I put the YouTube clip in my recap on syracuse.com. We put it out on social media, plenty of places to find this show. If you do miss it live, we'll be with you again after Syracuse plays Louisville on Wednesday night. Mike, get back to work, even after a busy day, and get back at it, my friend. We'll let you sleep tomorrow after a busy Sunday for you. Thank you, sir, for hanging as always. Thanks to everybody watching us tonight. We'll talk to you again Wednesday night after the Orange take on Louisville. Syracuse improves to 10-5 and 4-4 in the ACC tonight with a 76-73 win over NC State.
Always good to talk hoops, too.